Today I'm going to talk about a guy called Connor Murphy, who's a very successful YouTuber with over 4 million subscribers across his various channels, which is based around him being a charming, attractive bodybuilder who often posts prank videos. Earlier this year, Connor discovered psychedelics, specifically the DMT brew Ayahuasca, and things rapidly went from this to this.
If you don't know me, I'm Connor Murphy. Also, I'm God in every sense of the word, the metaphysical sense of the word God, and actually the material version of God, like the Christian God. Yeah, that's right, Sam. Howdy do. You thought I didn't exist, but I do. Yeah, but anyway, I've been pretty crazy over the past year. This year, I've faked my death for the world to see in order to try and prove that I'm Jesus. So, what are we doing? What are we doing? Well, we're having the greatest debate of all time, the debate to save humanity, the debate to save the world. I have all the answers, literally all the answers of the nature of reality and existence. You know, telepathy, homie, telepathy. We know what I'm talking about.
So, I'm probably stating the obvious here, but I think Connor Murphy has taken a little bit too much. For anyone who is new here, my name is Rob and I'm a huge proponent of psychedelic substances and for promoting honest conversation around what they can and cannot do. And a part of that is acknowledging situations where they might be having a detrimental effect. And that's something that we as a psychedelic community need to talk about more. So I'm not going to shy away from the topic. As I have said on this channel many times, these substances aren't for everyone. And unfortunately, the subject of today's video is a perfect example of someone who probably should have left them alone. The purpose here is to highlight the red flags and in this case, the absolute gravity of the situation, because I really do think that what we are seeing here is somebody coming psychologically undone. And there is no doubt in my mind that this guy needs help. What he definitely does not need is more psychedelics or any further destabilizing ideas being planted in his mind. And we'll see later on what I mean by that. But unfortunately, as of this moment, as I'm making this video, pretty much the opposite seems to be happening with Connor, and the impact on his mental state is alarming. Everything from his appearance to his mannerisms, even down to this bizarre game show host accent that he started talking with, it all indicates that he's not in a good place psychologically. I want to say up front that I genuinely feel for Connor's situation here. I've had my own moments of spiritual crisis, and I think part of why I was able to come back from that was the support framework that I had in place with my wife, my kids, my family, all which allowed me the space to help put myself back together again. By his own description, Connor is fairly disconnected from his family, and he doesn't seem to have anyone looking out for him here, or at least that's what he says. You know, with the state he's in, who knows what the truth of the situation is? Now, I don't think that Connor is a bad guy, or even that he's to blame for the situation, because the reality is he's rolled the psychedelic dice and he's come up unlucky, and that could happen to anyone. Still, it has happened, and that is what we're here to talk about, because I think this is something that the psychedelic community doesn't really know what to do with, and in that regard, we need to do better. Also, I want to put this out there as a message to Connor himself. Dude, if you want to talk to someone to work through some of these thoughts, feel free to reach out to me. You know, I fully appreciate that I'm nobody, but I have been working with these substances for over 20 years now, and I understand what you are going through. I also know a thing or two about staying grounded and integrating these transcendent states into everyday life. So, the offer's there. So let's start with, who is or was Connor Murphy? And I say was not because he's died or anything, but because the contrast between Connor Murphy at the beginning of this year and Connor Murphy today, physically, mentally, emotionally, it may as well be a completely different person. Connor was a young guy who got into bodybuilding and started a career on YouTube. He's what the internet would typically refer to as a Chad. Good looking, ripped physique, completely obsessed over his own appearance. He built a couple of very successful YouTube channels based around pretty much taking his shirt off, chatting up girls, taking his shirt off, doing some pranks, taking his shirt off, going to the gym, taking his shirt off. I think you get the picture, and it's fair to say that Connor's content was pretty shallow. You know, I do think that there is something admirable in people who have the dedication to sculpt their bodies in that way, but it's not something you can base your entire identity around. And Connor himself stated this in a very emotionally charged video where he revealed how unfulfilling his life was.
Look at my life. I fuck 3 fucking girls a day. 3 girls a day. Do you believe that? Fuck yeah, you do. Look at my YouTube channel. I'm popular. I'm famous. And this doesn't come from ego. This is because I'm unhappy. I have nothing that truly matters. I've stayed up all for 6 days. I've stayed up. I haven't slept. I wrote a 70-page book in 2 days to try and explain happiness to them. And it seems crazy, but yeah, I'm crazy, but I just want them to be happy.
This is the perfect example of someone having a spiritual crisis, and it's almost impossible to watch this and not feel sorry for the guy. The catalyst that kicked off this emotional outpouring was that early this year, Connor drank some ayahuasca, which then just led to the unraveling we just saw. From this, things escalated, and in a video he posted, it shows him having what looks like manic episodes, psychotic breaks, and emotional breakdowns, and more worryingly, suicidal ideation. Now, the actual truth of what happened here is hard to parse out because Connor himself stated that he was simply acting and that none of this was real. Personally, I think it's fairly obvious that the acting story was just that, a story, and apparently a few of Connor's friends thought the same and were so concerned at these videos that they called the police and had him put into psychiatric care for several weeks. After coming out of the psychiatric hospital, Connor posted another video where he said he was back to normal, and he confirmed that he had been drinking ayahuasca and it had shattered his worldview, but he was never going to do it again.
Yes, I'm okay. And I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you guys that. Because of everything that happened, I was actually put into a psych ward for over 2 weeks, which I'll talk about later in the video. But for those of you who don't know, a few weeks ago I made a video where it appeared as though I was gonna harm myself. Now, the explanation of why I made that video is much more complicated than you probably think. So a few days prior to making that video, I engaged in this spiritual ceremony where I took this mind-altering substance known as ayahuasca. This is a very powerful substance, and it caused me to act much differently than I normally would. I was not myself for a while after I took it. It caused me to think and act very differently. It's safe to say that I won't be taking that type of mind-altering substance ever again.
So it looked like we're going to get back to business as usual with him being a Chad and chatting up girls. But that ain't what happened. What happened was that Connor Murphy tumbled headfirst down the rabbit hole, and even though it looks like he hasn't hit the bottom yet, he's rebranded himself as an awakened, enlightened, actualized guru, and he started posting videos on his new channel which has some fairly familiar themes, such as an understanding of the nature of reality, God, and promises of some kind of amazing revolutionary secret that will be revealed if you sign up to his Patreon for $10.
I'll tell you the 2 most important videos, the 2 most important pieces of content, the 2 most important clues. Those 2 clues are the 2 videos on my Patreon. Makes sense, right? If you want the best clues, gotta pay for it.
And what's that secret, you say? Well, it looks to be a recipe for homemade ayahuasca, which along with his more recent erratic behaviour seems to give us an idea of the root cause here. Anyway, that brings us up to the present day, where we have this.
Tell you, I actually have a plan on exactly how to become a god. On my Patreon, by the way. Ooh, too much self-promotion. But I have a path that I can get people in a matter of weeks to enlightenment. But I am also willing to take certain legal mind-altering substances, legal mind-altering natural substances at pretty high degrees to where most people would be caught in some crazy wormhole of a vision and couldn't even talk. Why? Well, because they don't affect me anymore. Because these mind-altering substances actually show you the truth, you just don't realize how. I can explain how.
I don't think I really need to do any kind of deep psychological profiling to highlight that Connor seems to be a bit more eccentric than he was previously. I want to clarify here that I'm not advocating for Connor to go back to his previous vapid existence. Clearly, that wasn't working for him either. And there's only so much that you can base your entire identity around having a six-pack, so a psychological reckoning was kind of inevitable. But if we use the analogy of a ship sailing out in the ocean, then there has to be some kind of control when you're working on the critical systems. Otherwise, you risk sending the entire thing to the bottom of the ocean. Now, some of you might have noticed a similarity between what Connor here is saying and what our old friend Leo Gura from actualize.org has said previously. And that isn't by coincidence, because since Connor had this spiritual implosion, then he's been filling that new void in his consciousness by watching Leo's teachings. Connor himself revealed this in an open letter to Leo, which he recently published on YouTube.
I wanted to message Leo Gura because I want to collab with him. We're going to do a cool collab, me and Leo Gura. Who is Leo Gura? Leo Gura is a very intelligent being. In fact, I consider him the most intelligent being in the universe at an intellectual level.
Okay. Well, it's no secret that I've been critical of Leo's own delusional thinking, specifically his juvenile claims around having paranormal abilities, curing all diseases, ESP, telepathy, and these messianic ramblings about how the universe has chosen him to be its vehicle. The difference between these guys though is that Leo is just talking bollocks. And I think he's since realised this because he's pretty much shut the fuck up about all the cringy stuff he said at the beginning of the year, which I called him out on. Which is understandable. It's pretty difficult to substantiate claims of being able to cure all human diseases with your psychic powers in the middle of a global pandemic. Oof, bad timing there, mate. Connor, on the other hand, seems to be having a manic episode, which means he's much less likely to be able to just pull himself up out of it by his own bootstraps. He's gonna need some help. So we have one guy starting his own journey, clearly in a time of deep spiritual crisis, who is idolizing another guy who he perceives as someone to look up to, someone he's reaching out to for guidance. And what's Leo's response to this? To someone who is basically absorbing his actualized ideology to the T. Well, I actually don't need to guess at what Leo Gura thinks of this, because we can just pop on over to the Actualized forums and see exactly what he thinks. Firstly, he banned Connor from the forum, and then he proceeded to completely disown him, stating that he was making a mockery of his work and that Connor was acting like an unhinged lunatic. Holy shit. Let's just process this for a second. Leo Gura, the guy who announced that he was the most conscious being that ever existed on the history of planet Earth, a messiah personally chosen by the universe and given psychic gifts to heal humanity of all its ailments. The guy who claims to have a perfect understanding of love, empathy, suffering, consciousness. The guy who describes himself as greater than Christ, greater than the Buddha. And how does this supreme, enlightened being respond to a cry for help from one of his own? Basically with, "Fuck you, you're embarrassing me." Now, Leo, I get what Connor is doing here isn't a great look for Actualized, but where is your fucking compassion? This guy is pretty much word for word parroting your own delusional shit back at you. And I think maybe the decent thing to do here would be to try and clean up the mess that you had at least a small part in helping to create. Connor is a mirror for your own delusional bullshit. A big part of my issue here with what's playing out is that I'm fairly certain that Leo has backtracked on all his psychic superpower nonsense, but he's never had the spine to publicly say so. He just sweeps it under the rug and moves on to the next strand of wacky bullshit. You know, it's fine to say stuff and be wrong about it, but you have to own it and have some accountability, especially in realms like this when your entire brand is based around truth-seeking and awakening. So now we see where Connor is getting his ideas from, and we can see that he isn't actually getting any support from the enlightened souls over there at Actualized. So where does that leave him? Connor, I'm addressing you directly. I completely get that what you're going through might seem amazing or turbulent or like everything is all happening at once and it's according to some divine plan. You might have feelings that something secret has been revealed to you. I get it. Now, the key here is, what are you going to do with that information that is actually going to make your life better? How are you going to integrate that back into the best version of Connor Murphy that you can be? And I'm telling you, dude, that best version isn't some guy ranting about telepathy and trying to sell recipes for ayahuasca for $10 over on Patreon. You seem completely lost in this experience, and the map to finding your way out of it is not over on actualize.org. It's within, and you're going to have to do some major work to balance all this out. Because what you've done so far is not hard. Anyone can drink some psychedelic tea and have a transcendent experience and delude themselves into thinking that they've accomplished something momentous. So what you should do is take that same determination and work ethic that you put into getting jacked and focus that energy into building up your mental and your spiritual strength. This work is just like going to the gym, and you know the results don't happen overnight. So if you think you're going to become some fully enlightened super being from a few homemade glasses of ayahuasca, then you are being incredibly naive. Talk to someone you trust, someone you know who has your well-being as a priority. It could be a friend or a family member, a therapist, but listen to what they say. It's important. And again, feel free to reach out to me. I'm telling you up front that I am not a healer or guru, so I cannot fix whatever is going on with you. But I am willing to listen to you and work through some of these ideas that you're having. And I'll give you straight advice with no bullshit, which you might not like, but it might be what you need to hear. You need to find the middle ground here, mate. Balance the yin and the yang, because at the moment it's just all gas and no brakes. Okay, that was a difficult video to make because, pointing out the absurd narcissistic behavior of some guru is one thing, but seeing someone in need like Connor, it's an entirely different story, and I can only hope that I've handled it adequately. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before we wrap things up here. As always, a very sincere thank you to my supporters on Patreon. Thanks to them, I was able to buy a load of new CGI imagery, which you'll start seeing in upcoming trip report videos. In return for becoming a patron, you get access to some additional video content along with some features on Discord, like monthly patron-only video meetings and some other social shiz. So yeah, go and check that out. I've got some great new videos in the pipeline, so stay tuned for those. And if you like what I'm doing here, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time on Adeptus Psychonautica.